I refer to it as a Winchester house. Since I'm in San Jose, I can use this, where we keep adding these rooms, but we don't have a concept about, and a lot of the rooms are a good idea, like Prop 98, but they don't fit the overall architecture, and lots of times there aren't rooms, there aren't hallways connecting them. So in the next few years, there'll be a series of initiatives, pardon the choice of words, not specifically to the ballot, although some of them will be, by both government or business groups and by, hopefully, the State Labor Fed and others who want to change governance in California so that the majority party could actually have majority power. We could raise revenue like tobacco tax, alcohol taxes. We are 49th out of 50 states on what we charge for alcohol. I have a bill that's currently a 2-year bill that would raise a fee by a nickel a drink on alcohol that would raise $700 million that would go for rehabilitation programs for people coming out of the state prison system, which you folks have helped me to understand. Let me sort of segue into the prison system. As many of you know, I'm the chair of the budget subcommittee that has general government and corrections, and I've started to learn the correction system through you, and I wanted to do this because I figured I had 8 years in the Senate. This is before Ellen Tauscher became Undersecretary of State, and that through 8 years I could work on it, and that my reward would be changing the California Department of Corrections and working with you to make it work. So the California Department of Corrections, for those of you who are part of the organization, it's the 3rd largest prison system in the world behind China and the United States. It has a recidivism rate of over 70% as compared to other large states like New York, New Jersey, Texas, where the recidivism rate is less than or around 30%. And it's obvious to me, having talked to many of you, that when, as the warden at San Quentin said to me, who's now retired, he said, "Mark, why is it any surprise that we give people $200 who have mental health and substance abuse problems? When they leave here, we give them $200 and send them back into Richmond or Oakland in areas of poverty. Why is it a surprise to you that they're back in here within 30 days? When we don't have any kind of treatment, a real robust treatment program for them when they get out." So part of my concern, I'd be happy to answer any questions in this regard about the current budget, is that one of the places that we are going to get savings is $1 billion from the Department of Corrections. And much of it is a good thing, I think, in letting lower threat inmates out sooner, giving credit for inmates who go to vocational training that's available to them, which is far too little. And if they go and they take their treatment while they're in their facilities, getting early release time for that. But my question to you is, what happens to these folks? As I told the governor in a one-on-one meeting I had with them some months ago, I said, these folks aren't widgets. They don't just disappear. That if you send them back into the community and don't provide infrastructure for them to be able to be sober, to be able to deal with their issues around depression and poverty, and get a job, what's going to happen with them? They're not just going to disappear. So we know from other states that if we supply those services, we know what happens, is that people are able to incrementally at least start to get better and get healthier. So let me sort of go into an overall personal view of where we are in this country and this state and where the opportunities are. I don't know how this country moved away from the idea that we all had a social responsibility to one another, that somehow individual wealth became more important than the commonwealth. There's always been a struggle between individuality and the community at large in the United States of America, but somehow, in my view, it started during the Reagan administration here. We moved away from individual success isn't about the individual, it's how that individual success contributes to the overall success of the United States of America. And how we get back to that is going to be a struggle that I think will take at least a generation. But I think we get back to it, and we've started. I was lucky enough to be back in Washington for the inauguration of Barack Obama. And the day before, walking down the mall with my iPod on all by myself listening to Springsteen, a real rock star. But walking down the mall and never having lived in the South and seeing all these older African Americans in particular, one woman in particular in a wheelchair, and we just looked at each other and both of us were crying. The redemption of that moment, that for all the things that a lot of us despaired for this country, particularly during the Bush administration, the complete lack of regard for civil liberties, the complete lack of regard for the rule of law, going into a war with preemption, all those things that were so contradictory to what the American ideals are, and to wonder if it would ever turn around. And here came this, I like to say that historians say there were 3 providential American presidents, just incredible characters who came along with a unique set of talents and skills at an opportunity in this country's history, and they were Washington, Lincoln, and FDR. And I really believe that Barack Obama is the 4th. That this, I mean, and Hillary Clinton was an amazing candidate as well, but to have both of them and then to have this particular person. So when he said that day that we are the change we have been waiting for me that said it all. Because America is about participation. It's not about we're entitled to things. It's about responsibility to previous generations. And here we have this trying of all times in this country that basically came about because, in my view, of greed. And we have the possibility of changing and transforming this country back to a country about the commonwealth as opposed to individual wealth. And in this state, that will happen, I think, because organized labor will be the most significant contributor to that. So let me just end on one thing about the importance of organized labor in the context of what I've said. Post-World War II, this country grew the largest economic expansion in the history of the world. It's about 6.5% for almost 10 years. And in that same time, union membership in the United States of America was about 35%. That's not a coincidence. The reason why we grew in that period in such a robust way was because the growth was shared, that GIs came back and were able to buy a house that they could live in and raise a family and retire in and have Social Security and realize that they could be part of a community that cared about them. So here we are in this moment, and we have to go back to that period in time, and more working Americans, Americans who produce not just a product of labor, but a product of compassion and community involvement that you do. We have to get more middle American people the protection of good wages, good benefits, and a retirement system that will protect them for all the good work that they provided for the larger community during their working years. So the union movement is a huge part of that, and what you do is a huge part of that. And the only way we will succeed at that, I hate to tell you this, but the dirty word of politics, you have to do the things you're doing today. You have to question us, the elected people who you support and you don't support, and you have to participate. Because the absence of that has created a power, and as they say, if there's a vacuum with power, something will come in and take that place. And that absence has gone to very large corporate interests who have taken away the power of the middle income in the United States. So, I'm told I'm really bad at applause breaks, so I apologize. I get excited and I just want to finish talking. So in this moment in our history, I think we all should be glad that we're Californians, that we're Americans, and that we're part of the United States labor movement. Because the U.S. labor movement is something that has always led the world in terms of raising the quality of life in the world. So when Kennedy said that a rising tide will rise all boats, the question is the harbor protected? And the union movement in the United States is what protected the harbor. So I want to thank you for all that you have done, and just tell you that the rest of our lives, we should be engaged. As John Adams said, your obligation to your country in the United States of America ends only with our lives. That's what we should be about for the rest of our existence. Thank you very much for tonight. Be happy to answer.